The road. It connects cities, states, lives. But out there, beyond the streetlights, past the gas stations, and beneath the hum of your tires, there are things watching, waiting. Tonight, you'll hear 6 stories. Not from movies, not from books, but real people who encountered something they still can't explain, and some who barely made it out alive. These are the long stretches of highway where reality warps, where strangers smile too wide, where silence isn't empty. It's crowded with eyes. So check your mirrors, lock your doors, and whatever you do, don't stop driving. Because the moment you do, something might finally catch up. Story 1. The Man in the Drainage Tunnel. It was sometime after midnight when I first saw the man in the tunnel. I was driving through a forgotten stretch of highway between 2 border towns, hauling a shipment of refurbished medical equipment to a facility outside of El Paso. I'd made this run a few times before. It was long, dry, flat, and full of nothing but mesquite trees, dead jackrabbits, and shoulderless roads that punished every second you dared close your eyes. I was in my old International 4300, diesel engine thumping, FM radio fading in and out between static and Spanish rancheras. The kind of night that makes you feel like you're driving through a painting instead of real life. And not a beautiful painting either, one of those bleak ones where even the moonlight looks bored. I remember seeing the sign, "No services next 66 miles." After that, the lights thinned. Gas stations turned into gravel lots. And then eventually, nothing. Not even headlights in the rear view. Just me, the dark, and that low diesel rumble keeping me tethered to sanity. I hadn't planned on stopping. I never do when I'm that deep into the desert. But the moment came when I had to piss. Bad. I knew from past trips there was a narrow pullover spot, just past mile marker 123, next to one of those old concrete drainage tunnels that go under the road. Not even a real rest stop. Just a gravel semicircle, a rusted guardrail, and the kind of tunnel you'd expect to find rats or dead animals in. But that night, I found a man instead. When I pulled over, I left the engine idling. I didn't want to be in the dark for long. The tunnel opening was maybe 4 feet high, just large enough for someone to crawl through hunched over. I had passed it before, but this time, I noticed something strange. A shadow. Not just any shadow. A human shape. He was just standing in the entrance of the tunnel, hunched slightly, arms limp at his sides. No movement. No reaction to my headlights. Just standing. At first I thought it was some lost hiker or drunk, maybe someone who'd crashed out here. I stepped out of the cab and that's when I noticed the smell, like rotting meat left in the sun, thick, wet, wrong. I called out, "You all right, man? Need help?" Nothing. The figure stood, silhouetted by the dim light bouncing off my headlights. His head was tilted slightly to one side like he was listening, or calculating. Something about his stillness made my guts go cold. People don't stand that still. I walked a few steps closer. The man didn't move. I couldn't make out his face. His clothes were torn like he'd crawled through mud. His arms hung unnaturally low, too, like his elbows bent in the wrong place. I took another step and stopped. He made a sound. Not words, not even a groan. A clicking noise, fast, repetitive, like bones snapping underwater. I backed up. "Okay," I muttered, raising my hands. "I'm gonna go. You be safe out here." I got back in the truck, locked the doors, shifted into drive. The moment I started rolling away, the man took one step forward, into the full light of my beams. And I saw his face. Or rather, what wasn't there. His skin was stretched tight across his skull. No nose, no eyebrows, no ears. Just a sunken mouth full of teeth and 2 deep sockets where eyes should have been. But they weren't just sockets. They were moving, like something alive was squirming inside them. I pressed on the gas. The truck lurched forward and I didn't look back. I didn't want to know if he was following me. Back on the road, my heart thudding so hard it hurt, I tried to rationalize what I'd seen. Hallucination from exhaustion. A mask, meth head, something explainable. But here's the part I didn't understand. When I glanced at my dash, my GPS said something strange. Next tunnel, 14 miles. I'd driven this route before. There are no tunnels. None in the next 60 miles. It doesn't make sense. But there it was, plain on the screen. At mile 137, I saw another one. Another tunnel, identical to the first. Same slanted angle. Same graffiti. Only this time it was fresh. Still wet. Red letters that said, "You saw him." I didn't stop. I didn't breathe. I kept driving, this time flooring it like something was behind me. Because something was. At first I thought it was headlights. Faint. Maybe a mile behind me. But they weren't headlights. They were too high, and there was only one. And they didn't bounce or shift when the road curved. It was like someone was floating above the ground, staying at the same distance, always in my mirrors, but never getting closer, never fading away. I passed another tunnel, another shadow. This one was closer to the road. I called dispatch. No signal. I turned on the radio, just static, no matter the station. I even tried playing music from my phone, but the screen kept glitching. It flashed the same notification again and again. Location error. Tunnel detected. I unplugged the phone. Tried not to panic. Told myself this would pass. But it didn't. When I hit mile 162, I saw the last one. Tunnel. Silhouette. But this time, he wasn't standing still. He was crawling toward the road. I swerved. Almost lost control of the truck. Heard something scrape the side as I passed. Like fingernails dragging across metal. I drove until the sun came up, all the way to the drop-off. I didn't stop, didn't eat, didn't piss. Just delivered the equipment and begged the manager to let me crash in their parking lot. Later I checked the truck. Along the side, I found 4 long gashes, deep and curved like claws. And near the back bumper, carved into the dirt, a single handprint. Upside down. Weeks passed. I tried to forget. I even convinced myself it was a nightmare. Until one day I got a call from dispatch. They were rerouting me. Same job, they said. Back out to El Paso. I told them I wouldn't drive that route again, not for double pay. Not even for triple. They laughed. "It's the same highway, man," they said. "Only difference? They've been doing some road work, installing new drainage tunnels." I hung up before they could finish. I never took that job again. But every now and then, when I'm passing a lonely stretch of road and I see a dark tunnel up ahead, I swear I can hear it again. That clicking, coming from just inside. Story 2. The caller from exit 34. I don't sleep much anymore. When I do, I dream about diners. Not the cheerful chrome kind with jukeboxes and smiling waitresses. No, my diner is darker, quieter. It smells like wet metal. And it's always waiting for me, off a stretch of highway that doesn't show up on any map anymore. The place I'm talking about? Exit 34. I was a long-haul driver, working freelance after I quit my job at a logistics firm. That night, I was en route from Tucson to a supplier just west of Bakersfield. I'd left later than planned, maybe around 10 p.m. after getting held up in a shipping delay. The sun was long gone. I-10 was dead quiet, a black river slicing through the Mojave. I'd driven that stretch plenty of times, but that night, I don't know, something felt off. You ever get that feeling like you're being watched, even though you're miles from anyone? That's what it was. And then I saw the sign, Exit 34, Rest Stop Diner, 1 mile. It was an old-style green highway marker with faded white text. Looked like it hadn't been replaced in decades. Weird thing was, I'd driven this route dozens of times before. There was no Exit 34. But maybe I missed it. Maybe it was one of those old ramps they forgot to remove from the signage. So I took it. The ramp curved downward into a 2-lane frontage road lined with half-dead mesquites and sand drifts. At the end of it was a diner sitting under a flickering neon sign that read, Ruby's Roadhouse. There were no other buildings, no cars in the lot. but the red neon open sign blinked steadily in the window like a heartbeat. I parked, killed the engine, and immediately felt something wrong with the air. It wasn't just cold. It was heavy, like walking through static electricity, but I was exhausted, and I needed a break. Just 10 minutes, I told myself. Coffee, bathroom, back on the road. The bell above the door jingled as I stepped in. Inside was the definition of 1970s nostalgia. Red vinyl booths, checkerboard floors, the smell of burnt coffee and cleaning fluid. A jukebox in the corner played something low and slow, like a warped doo-wop record. And behind the counter stood a woman in her 40s with thick eyeliner, blonde hair in a ponytail, and a cherry print apron. She smiled, but her eyes didn't smile. "Coffee?" she asked. "Please." She turned, grabbed a pot, and poured black coffee into a mug with faded roses on it. "We don't get many drivers this late anymore." "Surprised you're open." "We don't close," she said. "Not for people like you." I started to ask what that meant when I heard it. Ring. A payphone in the back of the diner was ringing. The waitress turned pale. "Don't answer that," she whispered. The ringing got louder. I stood up, uneasy, and walked toward the phone. The receiver was cracked. A spiderweb of dust clung to the cord. I picked it up. There was no dial tone, no static, just breathing. Then a low, deliberate voice. "Don't let her lock the door." Click. I turned around. The waitress was gone. I walked back to the front. There was no exit. The front door had become a solid metal wall, smooth and seamless. No windows, no hinges. I ran behind the counter. The kitchen was gone, replaced with a black hallway lined with mirrors. When I looked outside through a side window, my truck was gone, not moved, not towed, gone. No tire tracks, no sound, just wind. I staggered back to the booth, sat down, heart racing. And then, just like that, it was all normal again. Booths clean, jukebox quiet, waitress behind the counter, smiling again, like nothing had happened. My coffee was refilled. "Everything all right, hun?" I stood up. "You're not real," I said. "This place isn't real." She gave me that same too wide smile. "You're just tired." And then, ring geek, the phone again. This time I didn't move. I bolted out of the diner and down the road. There was a rundown gas station a half-mile away, lit by a single buzzing bulb. Inside was a bearded man in a grease-stained mechanic's shirt. "Lost?" he asked. "I was at Ruby's. My truck's gone. I need a phone." He stared at me for a long moment, then nodded. "Back freezer." I thought he meant the payphone was back there, but when I opened the freezer door, I didn't see shelves or ice cream. I saw a tunnel. Inside the tunnel were hundreds of doors with old motel-style placards. Each had a date and a short message. October 3rd, 2021, you answered the phone. October 10th, 2021, you stayed too long. October 17th, 2021, you tried to leave. October 24th, 2021, you died. I reached for the handle on one that read, November 7th, 2021, you forgot her name. The door opened to a mirror version of Ruby's. Everything was reversed. The booths were on the left instead of the right. The waitress had no eyes. The jukebox played in reverse. I ran. Back in the hallway of doors, I saw others. Not creatures, people. Other drivers, travelers. They looked confused. Some of them were muttering to themselves. One man was weeping and pressing his forehead to a door labeled, "You let her in." Another was trying to smash a window that wasn't there. I asked one guy how to escape. He looked at me and said, "You don't." I opened one more door. I was back in the real Ruby's, or close to it. This time the waitress was waiting. Her mouth was open far too wide. Her jaw stretched down to her chest. She spoke in a voice that was layered with echoes, like 10 people speaking through her. "You answered. Now you belong." The diner began to melt. I mean that literally. The ceiling turned to tar, the floor to liquid. My shoes stuck. I pulled free and ran. I don't remember how I got out. The next thing I knew, I was in my truck, pulled over on the shoulder of a road with no name. The diner was gone. I was covered in sweat. My coffee cup sat in the console, but it wasn't mine. It had a rose on it. I drove straight home, called dispatch, took 2 weeks off. I looked up exit 34 on Google Maps. There's nothing there, no rubies, no gas station, no records. I checked driver forums, Reddit, nothing. But here's the thing. Every Sunday night my phone rings once, always from no caller ID, always at 2:34 a.m. And when I check it, there's no voicemail, just a message in my text that disappears after 30 seconds. It always says the same thing. You didn't stop her. Story 3. The convoy that wasn't there. I've been driving long-haul routes for nearly 17 years. I've crossed 47 states, hauled everything from produce to blood plasma, and I've seen just about every kind of weird thing you can imagine on the road. Drunk drivers, jackknifed rigs, cows walking across I-70. But I never really believed in ghost stories. Not until last winter. Not until the convoy. It started out like any other haul. I was heading west on I-80 from Cheyenne, Wyoming, to a distribution center outside Sacramento. Tight schedule, midnight drive. My dispatcher, Roy, told me weather would be clean. Temps below freezing, but no snow. Good visibility. I was hauling medical supplies, so I was motivated to move. It was a lonely night, which for a driver is normal. But around 2 a.m., just after passing Battle Mountain, Nevada, I started seeing taillights up ahead. 4 rigs, in formation, about 400 yards ahead. They were spaced almost perfectly apart, that's rare. Most truckers are scattered, avoiding drafting off each other for safety. But this group? It was like they were choreographed. Curious and a little bored, I accelerated slightly to catch up. The trucks didn't have logos, just blank gray or black trailers. No dot numbers, no reflective company tape. But their rigs were spotless, new. No grime, no damage. Each truck had the exact same setup. Square trailers, mud flaps, LED side lights that glowed faint red. Even their cabs looked the same, like those Peterbilt 579s with the swept-back mirrors. And they were silent on the CB. I keyed in, "Convoy up ahead, this is Eagle 47, you all westbound?" Static. No reply. "Breaker, breaker, y'all running tight, who's lead dog up there?" Again, nothing. I got within 200 yards and matched their pace. That's when I noticed something strange. None of their wheels were spinning. At first I thought it was a trick of the light, but then I realized their tires weren't turning at all. They were gliding, smooth, perfect. Even over frost heaves and road bumps, the rigs didn't bounce, didn't shift. I dropped back. My gut told me something was wrong. I turned down the radio. All I could hear was my own engine, and something else. A low hum, like an old substation buzz. But it wasn't coming from my cab. It was coming from outside. Around mile marker 219, I decided to pass. I checked my mirrors. Empty road behind. I signaled, eased left, and accelerated. As I approached the rear trailer, my headlights swept over its back doors. Matte black, no license plate, just a faint imprint of a number, 1600. Then something flickered. For just a second I thought I saw a face in the reflective striping, pressed up against the trailer door, mouth open, staring, then gone. Suddenly my CB crackled alive. Eagle 47, Eagle 47. It wasn't my dispatcher. The voice was deep, wet-sounding, like someone gurgling underwater. Fall back. Then silence. I slammed the brakes and dropped back into the right lane, breathing hard. All 4 trucks continued ahead, perfectly aligned, as if nothing had happened. I followed them for another 60 miles. Not one of them turned off. Not one stopped for fuel, way stations, or rest areas. No blinkers, no brake checks, just forward motion. At 3:46 a.m., we passed a closed gas station with a digital clock sign. All 4 trucks went by. Except, when I passed the same sign 10 seconds later, it still showed all 4 trucks going past. A perfect replay, like watching a looped video. I checked my odometer. I had just passed that spot, but the trucks had never moved. I was chasing ghosts. My radio crackled again. Driver, pull off at exit 142. This is dispatch. Roy? What? Roy, is that you? Pull off. You're not supposed to be with them. The signal broke into static. That exit was just a mile up. I turned off. The ramp led to an old closed rest stop, one I'd used years ago. Graffiti, broken vending machines, but plenty of space to park and breathe. I stopped, shut off the engine, and tried calling dispatch on my cell. No signal. Then my CB came on again. Don't try to leave. The voice wasn't Roy. I was parked for maybe 5 minutes when I saw lights, headlights, slow and steady, pulling in beside me. It was one of the trucks, the fourth rig from the convoy. It idled next to me, engine silent. But there was no driver. The cab was empty. Then its passenger door opened slowly. I grabbed my flashlight and climbed out. There were no footprints in the frost on the asphalt, no tracks from the rig's tires, just smooth pavement. I climbed the stepladder, leaned into the cab, empty, smelled like burnt plastic and rust, and in the middle of the seat sat a CB mic, crackling softly. I reached for it. Before I could grab it, I heard something shift behind the seat. I shined my light and saw an eye, embedded in the back wall, human-sized, bloodshot, blinking, watching. The cab door slammed shut behind me. I leapt out, fell on the pavement, scrambled to my truck. As I backed away, the phantom truck slowly pulled forward and disappeared into the road like smoke dissolving into air. After that, everything unraveled. My GPS started glitching, showing roads that didn't exist. The CB spat out broken phrases like, repeat signal pattern, memory carrier activated. The further I drove, the less familiar the world felt. Mile markers counted backward. At one point, I passed the same sign for Welcome to Battle Mountain 3 times in 10 minutes. And then just before sunrise, they were back. All 4 trucks, lined up ahead of me. I don't remember catching up. They were just there. I screamed into the radio. What are you? What do you want? Silence. Then, you've always been with us, driver. You just forgot the route. We're almost home. They turned onto a road I'd never seen before. No markings, no map data. Something in me said, don't follow. But I couldn't stop. I turned. The road narrowed into a gravel trail, then a cracked concrete causeway leading to an industrial complex, half buried in dust and age. I recognized it. A decommissioned freight hub. Shut down after a derailment in 1996. The trucks pulled in one by one and vanished into a loading dock that was boarded up. When I approached, I saw it. The name stamped into the steel above the dock. Zone 1600. Same number on the first trailer. I parked, got out, walked to the loading dock. The air was buzzing. The hum was louder than ever. And then, a whisper behind me. It's your turn to lead. I turned. A 5th truck was idling behind me. Brand new. No plates. Same glowing lights. My name was painted on the driver's side door. That was 2 months ago. I'm still driving. But I don't know where anymore. There are no exits, no towns, no signs. Just the hum and the road. Sometimes I pass other drivers. They don't see me. Sometimes I talk on the CB. No one answers. But every now and then, I hear a new voice. Scared. Confused. A driver who saw a convoy they couldn't explain. I listen. And I wait. Because eventually, it's their turn to join us. Story 4. The turnoff that wasn't there. They say not to drive tired. They also say not to pick up strangers in the middle of nowhere at 1:44 a.m. I did both. I was about 18 months into being a full-time rideshare driver, mostly late nights, long hauls, and last-minute dispatch calls. It was the kind of job you took when you were halfway between ambition and burnout. I drove to pay off debt and avoid people. That night was cold, clear skies, quiet road. I just dropped someone off at a rest stop outside Boulder when the app buzzed with a ping. A pickup flagged about 12 miles ahead on Route 119. Passenger Eli, rating 4.9, trip length 38 miles. The profile picture was blank. I almost ignored it. But $72 was hard to turn down. And I thought, what's the worst that could happen? I would find out. He was standing on the shoulder just before a blind curve. No lights, no buildings nearby, just pine trees and rock and wind. I rolled down the window a little. You Eli? He nodded once, slow. He had on a brown coat, too thin for the cold, face pale, no bags, no phone in hand. I tried to play it normal. Hop in. He slid in the back seat directly behind me. Didn't say a word. I checked the app. His destination was entered, but there was no address. Just a red marker deep in the mountains. Looks like we're headed to Ridgeback Pass? Correct, he said quietly. His voice was wrong, soft but heavy, like it echoed inside his chest. Been up there before? I asked. No, but you have. I blinked. No, I haven't. He didn't answer. About 20 minutes in, the map told me to continue on the main highway, but Eli leaned forward and pointed through the windshield. Take that turn. I looked. There was no turn, just a wall of trees. But then, the trees split. A narrow gravel road appeared, just wide enough for a single car. That's not on the map. It's shorter, he said. Trust me. I don't know why I listened, but I turned. The moment we left the main road, my GPS froze. Cell signal dropped. The only sound was gravel crunching under my tires and Eli's breathing behind me. The path was winding, narrow and steep, the kind of trail used for logging, not driving. Pine trees crowded the edge of the road, trunks close enough to scrape paint if I drifted. No lights, no signs, no mile markers. I asked, "Is this really going to Ridgeback Pass?" Eli didn't respond. I looked in the mirror. He was staring out the side window like he was watching something follow us. And then, without turning, he whispered, "They can't see you if you keep moving." An hour passed. I should have been near the next town. But there was nothing. Then we passed a wooden sign, half rotted and nailed to a tree. Burned into it was a single word. Still. I asked, "Still what?" Eli leaned closer. "Still yourself. Still your thoughts. Still your fear." My skin went cold. "Who are you, man?" But he just closed his eyes. A few minutes later, I saw movement. Not animals, not deer. Figures, thin, gray, barefoot, watching from the tree line. I turned the high beams on, and they vanished. Instantly. Not ran, not ducked, just gone. I hit the brakes. Eli said, calm as ever. "If you stop, you'll hear them. If you listen, they'll speak. If they speak, you won't be driving anymore." I started driving again. Faster. I looked into my rearview mirror. Eli was still there. But when I glanced again 5 seconds later, he wasn't. The seat was empty. I looked back over my shoulder. Still nothing. I slowed, heart pounding. "Eli?" A hand touched my shoulder. I almost swerved into the ditch. He was back in the seat. "I told you not to stop," he said. The road dipped. We entered a mountain tunnel, old, unlit, carved through black rock. Halfway through, my headlights flickered, then died. Complete darkness. I kept my foot steady on the pedal, guessing at the curve. That's when the car started filling with whispers, voices overlapping. Male, female, childlike, some speaking backwards. And beneath them, Eli's voice chanting a phrase over and over. "The passenger becomes the path. The driver becomes the door." I screamed, "What are you?" No answer. Then, the lights returned. Tunnel ended. We emerged on the other side. Into nothing. The world had changed. The trees were gone. The mountains were gone. The road now floated over a black void, like a ribbon across space. Above us, no stars. Just a gray dome. No sound. Even the engine noise was muffled. Eli said, You've taken the turn few ever see. Now you must finish the ride. I want out. He smiled, the first time he'd smiled. It was not human. Too wide. Too many teeth. You were never driving me, he said. I've been bringing you here. There was someone in the front seat. A woman in a hospital gown, pale, eyes milky white. She was facing forward, silent. I slammed the brakes. But we didn't stop. The car kept moving. I looked back. The road behind us had vanished. Just nothingness. The car was floating forward on an invisible track. The woman slowly turned to look at me. She whispered, "It's your turn to ride in the back now." I blacked out. When I opened my eyes, I was outside the car, watching it from the side of the road. Eli was in the driver's seat. The woman sat next to him. And in the back? Me. Face blank. Eyes dull. Hands limp on my knees. Watching myself. The car drove on into the fog, and I was left behind. I don't know what this place is. I walk the side of the road, alone. I never get tired. I never get hungry. Sometimes I see other cars pass. Drivers. I scream. I wave. I beg. Sometimes they slow down. Sometimes they stop. But when they open the door, I feel myself pulled back in, and I become the passenger again. And the ride starts over. Story 5, The Other Route. You don't expect to see your own car coming the other way on a highway that only goes one direction. You definitely don't expect to see yourself driving it. But I did. And it only got worse from there. It was 1:12 a.m. when I merged onto Route 17 westbound, deep in the Appalachian backwoods. I just left my brother's funeral in West Virginia. Small service, closed casket. The kind of grief where the silence in the room feels heavier than the coffin. We hadn't talked in years. There was no falling out, just life pulling in opposite directions. I told myself I came to say goodbye. Maybe I came to bury guilt. I'd planned to fly home, but my return flight was canceled due to fog and reroutes. The earliest I could rebook was 36 hours later. No thanks. So I rented a car, filled the tank, and figured I'd drive the 12 hours home through the night. The kind of road trip you use to clear your head. Just me, the road, and a long stretch of nothing. Or so I thought. Around 2:40 a.m., I was halfway up a winding pass that hugged a pine ridge. No cell signal. Radio was dead. I hadn't seen a single car for nearly an hour. Then, just past mile marker 121, I saw headlights coming toward me. I eased my foot off the gas. That didn't make sense. The stretch I was on had no entry ramps for 25 miles. It was treated like a one-way route by locals. Everyone headed west. GPS apps even marked it as recommended outbound. As the car approached, I gripped the wheel. Something about its silhouette tugged at the edge of memory. It passed, and my stomach dropped. It was the same car I was driving, down to the make, model, rental decal, and dent on the rear fender. Same plates, too. H98, 4VU, and behind the wheel, me. I hit the brakes, hard. My heart raced. I looked in the rear view, nothing but fog and empty highway. I let out a shaky laugh. Told myself it was a trick of the light, fatigue, grief, maybe some cocktail of all three. People see weird things under stress. But deep down, something itched in my brain. That uncanny feeling when you're sure you've seen something you're not supposed to see. I checked the dash clock. 2:43 a.m. I started driving again. But now I kept glancing at every oncoming curve. About an hour later, I passed a wooden road sign nailed to a bent metal pole. Welcome to Crofton Gap, elevation 2911 Crofton Gap. I didn't remember passing through it before, but whatever. It was late. Then I passed it again. Same sign. Same lean, same bent corner, same bullet hole. I swore under my breath. Glanced at the dashboard GPS. It had restarted itself. Calculating route. Then it rerouted my drive. Added 6 more hours. What the hell? My phone had no bars. Wi-Fi icon blinked out. I laughed again. Louder this time. Humorless. I wasn't scared, not yet. I was annoyed. I passed a turnout with an old picnic table. The same car was parked there, my car. Driver's door slightly ajar. Cabin lights on. No one inside. I didn't stop. But my hands tightened on the wheel, and for the first time I said out loud, "This doesn't make sense." At 4:19 a.m., I saw a flickering neon sign ahead, a gas station, no brand, just a big glowing open over 2 empty pumps. I pulled in. Only one other vehicle, another silver sedan, same make, same model, mine. I parked next to it. They were identical. I walked in. A middle-aged woman at the counter glanced up and froze. "You again?" she asked. I blinked. "What? You just came in. Didn't even speak, just stared and walked out. You okay?" I think you have me confused with someone." "No, I don't." She reached under the counter and handed me a receipt. It had my card number. Same total I expected from a fill-up. Timestamp? 4:08 a.m. I hadn't been there at 4:08 a.m. Had I? I rushed to the restroom. I needed to breathe. I splashed cold water on my face. When I looked up, my reflection wasn't moving. I blinked. It didn't. It stared at me, then grinned. Wide. Wrong. Then it raised a hand and traced something onto the mirror from its side. A single word. Trade. I got back in the car and locked the doors, turned the key. Nothing. Dashboard lights flickered, then the engine roared to life on its own. The GPS flashed once. Next, right turn, the other route. I hadn't programmed anything. The car started driving before I pressed the gas. I slammed the brake. The car stopped, and a voice whispered from the back seat, "You don't belong in the front." The road veered suddenly, taking me down a stretch that didn't exist on any map. No signs, no landmarks, just gray fog and endless road. Trees warped, power poles tilted like crosses. I passed a highway marker labeled R17. The first letter was missing, or ripped off. I saw him standing on the side of the road. Me. Same jacket, same face, except this version was crying. I slowed, rolled down the window. He looked up and whispered, "If you keep going, you'll forget who you were." I asked, "What is this place?" He didn't answer, just backed away and faded into the woods. Eventually, the road ended at a tunnel carved into a cliff face. Black stone, no lights. On the arch, a phrase etched in flaking gold letters. "The driver always returns." I drove in, my headlights cut out, and the world turned upside down. I emerged, right back onto Route 17. Same elevation sign, same fog. I drove for hours, past another version of myself. This one with no mouth. Another had no eyes. Another had a passenger I didn't recognize. Someone sobbing with their face hidden. Then I came to a fork. Left, black road, nothing visible. Right, a glowing archway. Warm light. A house beyond it. Familiar. I pulled over. In front of me, standing in the middle of the road, were 5 versions of me. Each wearing my jacket, each holding out a hand. Only one of them spoke. "You can't finish the drive. You were never meant to." I asked, "Then what am I supposed to do?" They stepped aside. Behind them, a hearse, with my name printed on the tag. I didn't choose the arch. I didn't choose the house. I chose the black road, because I had to know. Who was the original? And if I wasn't, who was? Now I'm still driving. The road doesn't end. The sky is gray and close. Other me's pass by sometimes. Some wave, some scream. And every now and then, I see you. So if I pass you one night, in a car that looks just like yours, don't wave, don't follow. And whatever you do, don't take the other route. Because once you do, you'll never drive alone again. Story 6. The Detour. They say you can never go home again. I don't think that's true. I think home finds you, even when you don't want it to. My name is Sarah Maddox. At least that's what my driver's license says. Last October, I was driving solo from Colorado Springs to Fresno. I had taken 2 weeks off work. No husband, no kids, no wedding ring. Just me, a rented navy blue Subaru Forester, and a GPS that promised I'd make it across the desert in 17 hours if I drove overnight. I had snacks, podcasts, backup chargers, the usual setup. Things were fine until somewhere around Arizona, just outside Holbrook, I hit traffic, a standstill. Red brake lights blinked like warning sirens in the night. My GPS rerouted. A soft chime, then the robotic voice. Rerouting, detour, exit 174 to County Road 6C. I didn't question it. Big mistake. The exit came up fast, no streetlights, no signs, just a 2-lane road that split off into blackness. I turned. The second my tires hit the asphalt, the ride smoothed out. No bumps, no rumble, just silence. Too much silence, no engine noise, no road hum. Just the sound of my own breathing. The trees lining the road were too perfect. Same height, same spacing, like scenery from a video game. That was the first red flag, but it wasn't the last. About 20 minutes in, I passed a green highway marker. White reflective letters read, S. Maddox RD, 2 miles. I blinked. That was my name, my exact name. I laughed it off, probably coincidence. Some old pioneer family I shared a name with. Weird, but not scary. I kept driving. Then I passed a billboard, an actual full-sized roadside billboard. It said, "We're almost home, Sarah." White letters, plain black background. There was no company logo, no sponsor, just my name. I slowed down. My hands started to shake. I tried turning on the radio and static. I opened my Maps app. Nothing. No signal. No Wi-Fi. Just the road, and the creeping feeling that it was watching me. Another sign. First kiss. 1997, Logan Davis. You remember. I gasped. That wasn't public information. That was mine. A stupid teenage moment behind a bowling alley. No photos, no diary, nothing anyone would know. I pulled over, parked, tried to get out. The door wouldn't open, none of them would. And then the car started driving again. The dashboard lit up again. But the voice wasn't robotic anymore. It was my voice. It said, "Don't be afraid, you chose this, you just don't remember." I screamed. I yanked the wheel. The car didn't turn. It drove straight, hands off, gliding like it was on a track. Another billboard passed. Same message. "We're almost home, Sarah." Then, just a few more memories to shed. I looked in the rearview mirror, and I wasn't in it. The seat was empty, but I could still see my hands, still feel my breath. I touched my face, but the reflection never moved. It just stared forward, blank, doll-like. Then it smiled. Over the next hour, if it was really an hour, I started forgetting things. The names of my siblings, my parents' faces, the layout of my childhood home. It all slipped, like someone was peeling away parts of me. And every time something faded, the car sped up. I turned a bend and saw a corridor of signs on both sides of the road. Each one had a name. Sarah Maddox, age 3. Sarah Maddox, age 7. Sarah Maddox, age 12, first breakdown. Sarah Maddox, age 23, lies to herself. Hundreds of them, a lifetime lined up like a funeral procession. At the end, one final sign. Sarah Maddox, final version, accepted. I looked in the mirror again. She was back. Me, but not me. Hair too neat, eyes too wide, skin too smooth. She leaned forward, out of the mirror, and whispered, "You were never driving. You were always the passenger." The road split into two. Left, a glowing tunnel of white light. Right, an endless night road flickering with distant signs. The GPS whispered, "You may exit now." I couldn't choose. I didn't want to. But the car turned right on its own, into the dark. I'm still driving. I don't know what day it is. I don't know who I am. Sometimes I see other cars. They look like mine. And inside, I see people just like me, confused, crying, whispering. Sometimes I pass billboards for their names. Sometimes I hear them scream when the road won't let them turn back. I think I'm a part of something now. Maybe a network, maybe a trap. I just know this. If your GPS ever says recalculating County Road 6C, don't follow it, because once you take the detour, you don't come back. 6 stories, 6 roads, and not one of them leads exactly where it should. From shadowed diners that remember you, to convoys that don't stop, from passengers who were never picked up, to versions of yourself you were never supposed to meet, from detours that steal your memories, to roads that won't let you leave. These weren't just stories. They were warnings, reminders that the road you think you know might not be your road at all. So the next time you're behind the wheel and the night feels too quiet, or the signs feel too familiar, or your reflection won't look back at you, ask yourself, are you still the driver, or has something else taken the wheel? Subscribe for more true horror on the road. The next detour might be yours. Detour might be